to the Audio Nowcast, sponsored by API. Now from the Nowcast Network Studios, here's Mike.
Hey, welcome to the Audio Nowcast. My name is Mike Rodriguez, and before we get going, let me introduce the guys. Starting with the one and only Mr. Bobby Osinski. Bobby.
Hey, Mike. Hey, everybody. Good to be back.
And followed by Mr. Nick Peck.
Hello, Mike. Hi, guys. What a pleasure to be able to use that sound again, let me tell you.
And then we have the sound design guru, Mr. Scott Gershon.
Hello, everybody.
And finally, last but not least, the Iron Man of the Audio Nowcast. Oh, it's so glad to see him back again, as everybody, Mr. Rob Arbiter.
Hey, everybody. It's great to see everybody. I've been sitting here in our podcast room for a really long time waiting for you guys. So I'm glad you finally showed up.
And today we're honored to have with us, our first guest that we had when we started the podcast 20 years ago, Mr. Larry Droppa.
Woo! Wow. Hey. Hi, everybody.
Larry is
Glad to be here.
president and owner of API Audio. So we're going to be talking about API Audio. We're going to be talking about analog. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. But first of all, let's just, let's just address the elephant in the room. That was a 4-year hiatus that we took. And a lot has happened in those 4 years. And just so you know, what ended up happening was the last show that we posted was actually our tribute to Dave Smith. We posted that show, and that, to be honest, that knocked a lot of us, since we knew him pretty well, the air out of a lot of things. And then we did a couple shows. I'm calling those the lost episodes, and I'll post those, but things got crazy and just things didn't work out, and they haven't been posted, but we have them. And some of those shows are actually really good. So those are going to be little bonus shows that will drop every now and then. So now we're back. We have a new format. Everybody's super busy, so we're going to be doing remote. We're going to be posting the video on YouTube, and as well as doing all the normal podcast for the audio. But it's going to be fun, and we're going to be doing at least one a month. We're not going to try to overpromise because it got kind of crazy there. But it's great to be back. I mean, I was looking forward to this all day. It's amazing. And you know what's amazing about today's podcast? It restarted the same way it started. We all saw each other at NAMM. We were all talking. I saw Bobby and Rob, and everybody was talking about the podcast, and I was like, you know what? We need to podcast again. So NAMM, man, NAMM was the spark.
That was the catalyst.
On the whole thing. But before we start visiting with Larry and talking about analog in today's digital world, I just want to go around super quick and just have everybody, let's catch up a little bit. And I'll start with you, Bobby. What have you been up to in these last 4 years?
Well, let's see, in 4 years, 4 books, at least. Let's see, Mixing Engineer's Handbook, 6th edition. Which is the latest one, the Recording Engineer's Handbook, 5th edition, the Mastering Engineer's Handbook, 5th edition, and also a book on AI for musicians, and it's AI for music production. So, and then with that came an online course that I did, and I updated a number of my online courses, and I've been in the studio off and on, good amount, mostly producing some movie things. So it's been a nice 4 years.
That's fantastic. One thing I want to ask you is, in the last 4 years, has there been any piece of gear that has surprised you as the way you've used it, or any new processes that you brought in? Anything changed from your workflow?
I'd have to say no.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's go on to you, Nick. How's things going? Catch us up a little bit. And is there anything, new piece of gear, any new process that you've adopted these last 4 years?
Absolutely. So let's see, 4 years. In the last 4 years, My son is now living on his own in Costa Mesa and working and building a life for himself, which I couldn't be more proud of. My daughter is a junior in high school, and so we're going through all the parental craziness trying to figure out where she's going to go, which is wonderful. And other than that, professionally, I've done a ton of work in the modular music space. I've been doing concerts and performing and doing YouTube videos and all of that stuff, which has been great. It's been really nice to deepen my ties to the experimental avant-garde electronic community around here in LA. It's been wonderful. Picked up the Chapman stick and started learning it, which was really, really great. And I am now working on sound designing a big project for Disney and Audible Originals, and can't talk about it yet, but it's on its way, and it's wonderful. So all of that's really, you know, on the brighter side, to say the least. As far as new gear, there are two things that I would like to mention briefly, and both of them are software. So the first one is SoundMiner, which I know Scott knows better than anything, which is the, you know, the king of the hill as far as sound effects database management programs for sound designers like us. I spent the time, I had a little bit of time, and so I spent it converting my entire sound effects library to the universal category system. I see Scott laughing, and oh my God. Yeah, 10,000 files, quite a bit, in which you have to organize things. And it's really great when it's done, because then all of your sounds have been organized in a way that it's really easy for you to find them. And if any other sound designer needed them, so if Scott came to my studio and he needed a whoosh, would know exactly where to look for it, because we call it the same thing. So that's been great and very tedious, but I've got a little bit of time to do it. And the other big one is that I am now a certified trainer for both DaVinci Resolve and the DaVinci Resolve Fairlight page. So
Nice.
I am doing this Disney project entirely in Fairlight, and
Wow.
SoundMiner connects to Fairlight. So
Wow.
I know. Oh, I know.
That's a shocker.
It's such great
good.
software.
You were such a Reaper person. You
I
know,
was.
So that's like that's great.
I don't Reaper will be okay. It'll be
No,
all right
I
without
know.
me. But it's such an incredibly powerful piece of software, because it's a DAW like Pro Tools or like Reaper or anything, but it's completely designed for audio post from the ground up. It's not like
fantastic.
having to be halfway music and halfway post. That's all it's about, is sound for picture, or sound without picture, in fact, which is what I'm going to be doing with it.
That's fantastic. That's great. And later on offline, I got to ask you some advice on that. Scott, what about you? These last 4 years, what have you been up to? Give us a quick rundown, and then tell us if there's been a particular piece of gear or software that's kind of changed your workflow or changed the way you work.
Sure. I'll be honest. It's been an amazing 4 years. A lot of things happened in a good way. I did a movie called Pinocchio. We won an Oscar. We won all the awards for sound. And between the games and the movies, and I did Transformers 1, and now I'm doing Street Fighter. And then I got a Lifetime Achievement Award last year. And so it's been, hey, you take it while you got it. And it's been a good run. And yeah, so, it's good and bad, because I've been busy. So that's the wonderful part. And the challenge for being busy is you're busy. So, it just happens I have this week off. You have to last 8 weeks. So it's good to take a break. But I'm also glad that I'm working. So it's crazy out there. It's a very challenging industry in both games and movies and TV. It ain't for the faint of heart. So, you take it while you got it. Gear. It's so hard because I use so much gear all the time. Sometimes I'm never sure what's even new. But I'll say this. One of the biggest things that I think is changing is the ability to communicate. So whether it's a combination of Slack, SoundMiner, we're using LucidLink to be able to do kind of streaming live. There's so many amazing things that I've seen. I was over yesterday at John Ross's house, and he's the one that did all the Taylor Swift and the Beyonce videos, and he's able to stream live through the internet, full Atmos, 4 camera. He's building some technology at his place that is mind-boggling, and I just saw it yesterday, and good for him. He's where basically artists now can become distributors.
That's
So
that's amazing.
Right. So in other words, he created technology so they could stream straight to the theater,
Yeah.
and they could stream straight for the concert, straight to you on the internet live without going to any studios.
Yeah.
And it's all being controlled by the artist. So there's some fascinating technologies that I'm seeing on that front.
Well, you know what? That's huge, because communication is definitely has had some tremendous strides and impacts on all our workflows. And by the way, I'm sorry we weren't there when you were thanking us, the podcast, for during your lifetime, your acceptance speech. But next time
I did
Felt it in
we'll
our
watch
hearts,
it.
though, Scott.
I did
we felt
mention it, by the way.
We'll watch it. Rob, what have you been up to these last 4 years, and what piece of gear or software has kind of changed your workflow since that time?
Well, it has been an absolutely crazy 4 years. My life continues to be part music and part technology, and those two diverged a little bit more than normal, but it's been incredible. So on the music and production side, I'm in the process of launching a podcast network, which I think I may have been talking about the skeletal beginnings of a few years ago, but it's actually a real thing now. It's called the Greatest of Everything Network, and I'll start promoting some things on there as we keep doing new shows. But pretty excited about that. I've ended up using it as an excuse to buy a bunch of gear and gear up for the productions. So that shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. But we've now got basically 6 video studios completely outfitted for 4K and great sound and great lights and everything else. So that's been a really fun part of it all. And we've got 4 shows currently in production, and I'm about to sign a 5th show. I think we did a pilot, and I'm pretty happy with it. So it's becoming a real network, and we are not pushing it out there all that much just yet. But when we start, it's going to be a big push. So that's been most of my production fun in the studio. I've also been doing a bunch of piano performance, mostly on the East Coast, and I'm getting to play with some sort of legendary players, and I'll be able to talk about that more in the coming months, because I've got some shows canceled or shows scheduled that I can't talk about just yet. But it's pretty exciting to be doing some live playing again, which is fun. I still help Stevie when he needs me. I just passed 40 years with him, so that's a pretty crazy milestone.
Wow.
But then on the non-musical production side of it, I'm also now the senior VP of technology for a large, the software division of a large company, and have been building these massive e-commerce platforms, which I'll also be able to talk about more later. But it's been some of the most challenging technical stuff I've ever been involved with, but it's been really fun.
That's amazing.
It's very diverse. And then I'd have to say, for a piece of gear, it's DaVinci Resolve and all the black magic gear that goes with it. I just live with it all day, every day. I'm a huge fan of the Fairlight page. I actually didn't realize that SoundMiner is integrated with it, because when I checked a while ago, it was not. But that's great. But yeah, I've got a bunch of DaVinci Resolve workstations, and like I said, now 6 studios that are all based on Blackmagic gear. They are so smart to give away DaVinci Resolve for cheap, because I've spent a fortune in all the hardware that makes it cool. All the control panels and remote control cameras and all the other stuff they make. The Blackmagic stuff is absolutely great, and I'm looking forward to trying to get to the NAB show just to be able to see what's new and ask a bunch of questions. Although now that I know that Nick's a certified trainer, I don't have to go to Vegas. I could just...
I will totally come over and show you stuff that you probably didn't know was inside of Fairlight. I was
guarantee you
gobsmacked when I found out all the stuff that it did.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, that's amazing. And Rob, just nothing's changed. You've always been hyper working.
Just a little grayer, if that's possible.
That's amazing.
So Mike, what have you been up to?
Okay, a couple things, and I'll make it super quick. Essentially, I did a full switch to video production. I've been creative director for a tech company, and have also been directing a bunch of content. I've done about 155 shorts and things and content for this company. And actually so much so that I actually had to take out my 5.1 system at my house because I needed to convert more to a video bay. But what comes around, what goes around comes around, because now I'm mixing and doing my own audio post. And so it all comes back around. It just, I'm a firm believer of always have a B plan, because you never know when your A plan is going to be your B plan, and you just stay relevant. And for me, the one piece of gear that I have really leaned into and really has totally changed my workflow, and we're going to talk about it on the next podcast, has been AI. I've taken a giant leap in AI. I have a couple computers. I run my own local LLM. I run my own OpenClaw. I mean, I can have OpenClaw. I can talk to my OpenClaw local on my phone and get information and get files and things like that. And it's pretty amazing, because my whole thing was I don't want to pay. I was involved with some AI projects that kind of the cost just kept going higher and higher and higher, because you need to buy more tokens, more tokens, more tokens. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to get my own LLM. And so I invested in a NVIDIA DGX Spark, if you know what that is. That's just a little AI machine. And it is a lot. Like, there is, like, it's probably nothing for you, Rob, because you probably can speak this all day. But I've never worked on the terminal as much as I'm working on the terminal, and not just one terminal. I'm working on the terminal on my Mac. I'm working on the terminal on my PC, and then I'm remoting into the DGX and working on the terminal in the DGX. But the best thing about all of this is it can really change your workflow, but at the same time, you totally see, how scary this can be. And we'll talk about this, on the next podcast. But there's just some safeguards that aren't there that should be there. So much so that, like, when you set up OpenClaw, it basically warns you that this thing can kind of start thinking on its own, and there's this horror stories of sending out these bots, and the bots start freaking out and start calling your cell phone and stuff like that. Like, you just hear all these things. So
That's great to have software that has to have disclaimers like "warning may murder you in your sleep" eventually, or something.
It's crazy.
Sign me up.
So we'll talk about that on the next one. But yeah, it's cool, and I love it. Like, I cannot tell you how many hours I've spent into like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning working on it. And you're like, this is great. And originally I set it all up to do visual effects, because I have a friend of mine who shot a movie over in South Carolina, and he needed a shot over in the Hudson River in New York City. And man, we nailed it. And it was just like, both our jaws were dropping. And we did that all offline using what's called Comfy UI. And so everything was offline. So the whole key is, it can get expensive when you do this thing online, but if you can do it offline, you trade a few things. Now, you trade time, but it's still, it works out really well. So anyhow, yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Mike, do you ever use something called Matchbox?
No.
Okay.
No. Is that the Matchbox software that what's the name of that company? They also
Cargo Cult?
Yeah, exactly, Cargo Cult. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, they've done a new one where I don't need EDLs anymore.
Oh my gosh.
So what it does
amazing.
is it takes 2 pictures. Here's my old one.
Yeah.
Here's my new one.
Yeah.
And it auto figures out, because on the current film, they keep switching picture around.
Yeah.
It moves it somewhere later, and then it rebuilds it from scratch.
That's
based
amazing.
on whatever you compare it to. So you can say, here's my picture, my dialogue, and forget music because it's always changing. Here's some sound effects. It compares it. It gives you the shot, and now automatically, I don't need to know what kind of changes. It just does it in Pro Tools.
Yeah, I know about Matchbox because I used to, when I was in post-production, changes and things like that. And I always wanted them to get it, but the facility I was at, they wouldn't buy it. But that's amazing. It makes sense. See, AI is going to be coming in all those little things. You're going to see it. It's slowly going to sneak in. It's, we're already at the Jetsons, I can already tell, Alexa to turn lights on, lights off, things like that. And you just take it for granted. But it's changing the way we work, and I understand the fear that's there, but I'm of the opinion that if you conquer it, if you learn about it, if you control it, that will help you be less afraid of it. AI is not going to take your job, as they say. It's the person who knows how to use AI that's going to take your job. That's kind of true, but there's some jobs AI is going to take. So it's just the way it is. Anyway, that's great. Well, it's good to catch up with everybody, and now I want to shift over to Larry. Larry, why don't you fall asleep? Because I know it's like 4:00 in the morning over there.
Yeah, I'm tough. I can be tough once in a while, Mike.
But Larry, let's just start. How are things going over at API? Tell us a little bit about API before we actually get into some of the philosophical points about analog and things like that. What's new with API? What has changed for you in the last 4 or 5 years?
Well, I didn't get a chance to do the round robin here with everybody, but over the last 4 years, I would say I've become the president and CEO of a well-renowned audio company that I can't talk about, but I can talk about it someday. But it's API because nobody else is talking about what you're associated with, which is kind of humorous.
That hasn't changed in 20 years.
I know. We can't talk about it.
Yeah. So to be serious, we're still fortunate to be, in the analog audio business that's well regarded by people, and the combination of analog and digital interface for us has become easier as we become a little more comfortable with it. And we've introduced a couple products that work well with DAWs and that now, and it's chugging right along. We're pretty happy.
Let me ask you a question. Just from talking to you at the NAMM show and stuff, seems to me that your sales are going really strong. You're selling a lot of gear. Do you think the push for AI and the push that we have on this side is leading to an actual return to analog for some of the newer producers that are coming up? You get these kids that grew up in the box, right? I mean, we basically have a generation that grew up in the box, doing all their stuff, and now that they're looking for something real. They're looking for something authentic. Do you think that has really helped sustain this analog revolution?
Yeah, I think it has something to do with it, and I think when people discover that you can plug a microphone or a guitar into a piece of gear and hear the nuance and the bottom end and the way it all comes together, I think people get pretty excited about it, because it provides another level of confidence and creativity in the technology.
So having said that, what do you think? Uh, I know a lot of software companies have been emulating API gear, right? There's a couple of different plugins out there. Uh, you know, how are you ever afraid that this emulation is going to get so good, or is it already good, or is it good enough? And do you think are you ever going to be competing with yourself in the digital world?
No, I think it's already pretty good, and we're licensed, or we license our technology and products to both Waves and UA, and so we try to keep our fingers on those guys in particular, but they've done a really good job of emulating the hardware. Uh, Although if you use the software a lot and then are exposed to the hardware, we get reports back from people that go, "Oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
I really see what they're saying when the hardware is better," and it reinforces our belief that that's true.
And I'll say something. I am one of those people. In the last 4 years, Larry set me up, and I bought a whole bunch of 500 rack material, and I've got all the plugins, and I got the analog, and what I do with the 500 rack is amazing, and nothing against it. The plugins don't do it. Not what I'm doing with
Do you
it.
find
So
do you find yourself, Scott, going to the 500 rack out of choice, or because you go, "Well, this is what I want to use"?
both. I think that when I'm using mic stuff or doing synths or doing guitar stuff or just there's things that I can get out of the 2500 compressor, the graphic EQ, the mics that I want to add a little attitude to it. It's got that sound and the immediacy and the punch. I ended up vocalizing Dogfish for Pinocchio, and it was all through the API stuff. And there was no way I could have done it any other way. I've tried, and that's sort of what happened when I went to Larry and said, "Hey, please." And he sent me a whole bunch of stuff. I picked what I liked, and then it was amazing. And I don't like the graphic EQ as a plugin. That's why when you sent it to me, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm not interested. I plugged it in, messed with it, and went, oh my God, secret weapon. So cool. 2500 compressor just doing that thing that it does. And so I use plugins all the time. So when I use the analog stuff, it's for a choice, it's for a sound, and I think it's something that nothing else does. So I am one of those guys going, I've got both.
Right. Let me tell you, the 560,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's probably my favorite piece of API gear, because you're so right. The real version, there's just something about that curve when you start raising and lowering those graphics, and it just, man, talk about
the warmth, the overhead, the balls, all of that, that harmonic distortion in a very pleasing way of the compressor, and you just make, oh my God, it's huge.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Larry. Of all the different pieces of gear that API has there been a piece of gear that just has surprised you as far as A, being still relevant, or being such a hit and you didn't think it would ever, catch on as much as it caught on? Is there any API surprises out there, or that's still, relevant today?
Yeah, I think the 525 compressor surprises us, because it's a fairly specific piece of gear. It has its own characteristics and its own threshold of release, etc. And some people are uncomfortable with trying it out or relying on it to be, okay, this is the thing that'll do compression for me, which has then led us to develop the 527, which has all parameters adjustable. But people tend to go back to the 525 and go, that thing does it for me. So that has been a surprise over the years.
The 525, I can see why it's popular, because you don't have to think. Sometimes if you have gear that has a lot of parameters, then you start having to think. And the 525 is it's in its own lane, and it's like, you know what you're going to get.
Mhm.
It just comes right down.
But people tend to freak out because it doesn't have all of the control parameters, and going, well, I'm probably not going to be I may not be able to get what I really want out of this thing until they try it.
Larry, let me just ask a quick question.
Absolutely.
So my stick,
Sure.
the Chapman stick has got two sides. It's got a bass side and it's got a treble side. And the treble side, the first place it lands on my pedal board is my beautiful, delightful API compressor, the little blue one, the newer generation of your guitar pedals, right? And it sounds delightful, of course.
The transformer version.
Yes,
We
that's
call it
right.
the transformer. Yeah.
And I just wanted to know what you were thinking about in terms of the compressor design for that particular unit.
It's based largely on the 527 compressor as far as the feel of the compression itself.
Yeah, I was going to
So
say
yeah, glad you like it.
I was going to say the pedals that you have are awesome. I'm a pedal junkie. I got to buy a pedal at least once a month, if not once a week. And but I just showed a second. I saw your bass pedal. Because I'm using it for sound effects sometimes, so I'll snap a bass or hit a bass really hard. And I've got a couple of different direct boxes from different manufacturers. Nothing like that. The balls on that thing, and same thing on the guitar with the boost and the clean boost I can do, and just really drives the amp in some really interesting ways. I don't know how your pedals are doing, but they're awesome.
Well, to be honest, they have been a surprise for us because we introduced the pedals as sort of a convenient way maybe for a guitarist or a keyboardist to get into an API piece of gear, but the pedals themselves have really taken off.
Yeah.
And we get people sending us photos of their pedal board regularly with a transformer sitting on it. In fact, we just got one the other day from the guy who takes care of John Mayer's gear.
Yeah.
And we go, that's the kind of stuff that we hadn't anticipated, but the pedals do really well on a month-to-month basis. We have targets, of course, for each month for each piece of gear, and routinely the pedals go over our targets.
Let me ask you, Larry, the studio landscape is just weird, right? There's some big studios that have closed, things that have closed. Um, I mean, has that affected, do you see a drop in some of the gear because of that? Or is it just mainly shifted from the studios to the home market or different types of studios? Like how's that whole, you know,
Well,
ecosphere?
I probably shouldn't say this, but COVID was kind of good for us because, and my theory here is that people who are creative have to be creative. So when COVID hit and studios were closed, you couldn't go on the road. Creative people are going, there's still stuff in me that's trying to get out.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people said, all right, I've got to do something here. I'll build a home studio, or I'll finally make the leap to my home studio. So we benefited from the fact that you know, tens of dozens of people probably installed studios in the last several years in their home or bought a building that they use exclusively for themselves. And it's really been encouraging to see the number of people who we recognize their name, of course, and other people who are creative, but not necessarily that you've heard of before, are going, okay, I'm building a place so when I feel good, that's where my creativity comes out. I go to my own studio. So it's been really good for us.
Well, that's great. That's good because you hear all these doom and gloom, and yet being a manufacturer and you talking to you, you're like, wow, things are not as bad. It's just shifted, maybe. Bobby, let me ask you. You keep up to date with all your books and the Engineer's Handbook and things like that. Um, are you surprised about the relevancy an analog still has today? Was there ever a thought when you were working on these that somewhere in the future analog was going to, you know, be taken over by a bunch of boxes and a bunch of digital gear? Like how, when you projected forward, did you always see like analog being a major player?
Yeah, because there's still the mystique, the sonic mystique of it. And there's really, like we were just talking about before, there's nothing that can replace that, especially on a really finely made, finely modeled piece of gear, developed piece of gear. So I no, and the other thing that even when everybody was going to the box, what was interesting was we still have the analog world in live sound. And yes, even some of that's digital, a lot of that's digital, but there's still that element there that will still remain analog for a long, long time. So, no, I don't see it changing. If anything, I see it going back a little bit more analog.
Larry, let me ask you, in today's AI world, do you guys think about that as any part of your strategy, or are you monitoring it? You keeping your eyes on it? Because let me tell you, as all of you know, the AI is just getting so smart and so good at so many things.
Well, being the antiques that we are, we, we've successfully deflected, I think the responsibility around embracing AI. We know it's out there, and we have a younger generation of people who kind of poke us a little bit. They go, "You guys need to sharpen it up a little bit." But for the most part, we haven't. There's nothing currently in our technology that relies on AI or that we've used AI to produce a product or a revision.
Oh,
Well, the
please,
good news
please
is
don't put AI in a console.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
You-
yeah.
It's so funny you say that, Bobby, because I was reading a thread and somebody mentioned, like, do you ever think there's going to be an AI agent inside an analog console that'll help you mix? And I'm like, yeah, that's like a teacher and you learn how to do it. Like you are the agent, you know?
the good news, Larry. If you ever do decide to get into AI, you're only one letter away. Just take the P out, and
Yeah. Well,
marketing material
good
is really
point,
easy.
right? Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
I would argue that as far as, the analog resurgence, I don't know, and I see a marked interest in the analog world, in my own life and in the life of my daughter's friends. My daughter's favorite band is Fleetwood Mac. I mean, she has no interest in current music at all. And I think it's that ineffable beauty and artistry of incredible musicians writing incredible songs and performing them. Me personally, I'm a vinyl junkie. I love listening to records on my turntable. That doesn't mean I'm not a computer expert, because of course I am. But when I have the choice, and when it's about something that's artistic, doesn't digital and AI is certainly not the way for me. There's nothing like reading, the sleeve cover of an LP and putting the thing on, and the whole, thing of sitting down and actually actively listening rather than having something going on separately. Um, through Spotify or something. So I don't know. I love my manual typewriter, a Hermes 3000, for those of you who may.
But Nick,
Uh,
you step on a good point here.
Yeah.
And that is, I have clients from all over the world in the game world. They always come out to LA. And there's one place they want to go. In LA, they said, I want to go to Perfect Circuit.
Yeah.
And it is the #1 place. And that's where they go.
Yeah.
We're all going to go to Perfect Circuit. They want to play with the analog gear. And not only that, they want to put it through pedals. And I'm the one going, do you have anything that's digital that I can remember what I'm doing? And they're like, no. It's all going to be spontaneous. And but no, it is amazing. And the uptick that I'm seeing of all these music people from around the world, from Japan and China and Europe and just everywhere, man, that's the place they're always going.
Yeah.
And I've been starting, I'm starting to take all my cool, weird stuff and put it through guitar pedals. And
That's great.
And all my synths now, it's like, oh, it's boring to go straight. I want to beef it up and take my old my old sequential circuits. And, I'm doing punches now between bass guitars and boom, and hitting that, just hitting it hard. I'm like, all analog.
Well,
Awesome.
that brings up a good point that, analog is a great place to reinvent itself because you can just feed things in, feed things in, feed things in, get a synth here, get a pedal here, boom, boom. Bobby, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a question for you, Larry. I guess it was before COVID. There was a lot of activity with new studios in colleges and universities. It seems like every college was building their own studio and everyone was trying to make it more state of the art than the one down the road. Is that still happening?
It is for us, Bobby. There's still, surprisingly, still a high number of schools who have audio engineering programs who now either are expanding the program or are retrofitting older studios with newer gear. And so, yeah, we still on an annual basis sell several consoles to schools across the country and around the world. In fact, we're building a console right now for a audio school in Japan.
And Larry, do you find that, like for me, it's not analog or digital, it's analog and digital. So now, are you finding that you are then creating an extension of the digital world that we live in to create more tools that just happen to be old analog stuff that's amazing, or maybe not old, but Are you finding that there's a nice symbiotic relationship happening between the two?
There is. I think we're building gear that helps enhance the digital part of audio.
Right.
And a 2448 console is a perfect example. That's an inline console made with 24 dual inputs and a relatively small frame, which would be a standard console for us. But we haven't built one of those for probably 8 or 9 months now because everyone orders a 2448 with a space for a DAW in the middle. They
Right.
generally split the channels on either side and put a 20-inch center section so you can put a DAW in. And so an interfaces then with the console and your workstation.
Wow. So there's like this perfect harmony. You're literally the connection between the digital world and the analog world, like that console.
I
And
think
that's a great
we help
console.
make it easier. We help make it easier to be in the engineering seat and be in that, in the center of the mix.
Yeah.
Has it surprised you that a lot of these young producers are just embracing analog, as much as they are, these new people coming up?
Well, yeah, because I think most engineers they want to create a name, they want to create a sound, a signature, a reputation, and they've found that doing that in the analog world allows them to create a signature for themselves to go, this is my sound, this is the way I do things, and it attracts customers.
That brings up a question, another one. How much is saturation and overload a part of this, especially for a younger producer? Because the youngest generation seems to be really predisposed to cranking things up or using saturation plugins, distortion plugins, all that stuff. So is it something that people talk to you about, or is it just kind of a given?
I think it's a given. I think there are a number of people who became probably tracking engineers and found themselves in a situation where they overloaded the digital system on the front end when you're tracking, and you kind of can't get yourself out of that at that point. So you have to deal with some quality of audio issues. Whereas with an analog front end, you can hit it really hard, and you don't go over digital zero and come up with something that's unusable. You can really drive an analog front end hard and create a pleasing sound that's not clean and clear, but it creates, again, it can be an identifier of your pattern or your sound or your what makes people want to come to work with a specific engineer.
And I have a
See-
question with that thought. Sorry, did I
No,
interrupt
go
you
ahead.
about?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, and that is, with a lot of, you said up and coming people, the younger people, a lot of times they're
Mhm.
accessing a lot of the cheaper software that, it's cheap. And it doesn't sound great, has that sound, and it kind of, digital distortion has never been all that wonderful. And then I think there's more of it, we come from analog, went to digital, and we understand what analog does. But there's a lot of people that started at digital and it has that sound. And then when you start hearing what analog can do, you're like, oh my God, none of my stuff can do that. Not the, the stuff that
Yeah.
I've been buying, the $59 and the $200 and, piece of software.
Yeah, agreed.
One of the things that I just don't understand is this, and we're coming back to the same thing again, the same issue, is this fascination, glamorization of tape saturation. I just don't understand it because when I was growing up in the analog world, we hated it. Because you'd get this great sound off the console. It would go through the tape machine and come back, and it would sound muffled. It would
Yeah.
sound different. And you go, well, wait, I didn't want that. I wanted what I heard off the console. So
Yeah.
when the 3324s and 3348s came out, everybody thought, oh, great. Now it's starting to sound the way I heard it in the room. But now we have this total fascination about tape saturation. I have to use it on everything, and let me use it twice, and I just don't understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah. I can't say I understand it either, but it's a technique, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I think the appeal is the fact that, digital is so clean natively. That's what it comes down to. There's a staleness and there's a cleanness. And so when someone finds something that can redefine the digital sound, then they just go down that alleyway. They just go. The first time you hear any of the plugins that will thicken up the sound a little bit. Not like, oh, that's great. And they just, first time they put heat on Pro Tools session, and you're like, okay, so.
But Mike, but you do a lot of visuals.
Yeah.
So the question, because I always think of audio as visually, it's just kind of my thing.
Yeah.
So when you see visuals and it's pristine and it's sterile and you see every little pimple and detail and oh my God, it's great. And then all you want to do is put smoke out there, smear it up, because what I find is I'm trying to do things multidimensional.
Yeah.
So I want that sharpness in front, and then I want to smear the sound through saturation, so many things for depth of field, because I don't need everything to
Right.
be, perfectly
focus.
focused. Yeah. So I would imagine the same thing with visuals.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the same way. Like, some of the cameras we shoot with, tend to be a little sharp. And so the best thing about that is you can just go in there and, kind of not blur it up, but you definitely can take the sharpness off of it. So it's the same thing. There's that same thing. The film look is basically taking your sharpness down, increasing your contrast, things like that. And that's really doable with the tools that are out there. So actually, if what you say is, there's a lot of film emulation. There's a lot of digital tools that emulate analog style, and because of the same thing, it's like it's so pristine that you find your character. You find your character and the flaws. That's what it comes down to. Your character and your signature are all in the flaws. No one is going to have a signature that's pristine, because it's going to sound exactly like Suno music, every single time. So you're gonna find your character and your style in the flaws.
There's a lot of directors shooting with film, and then they transfer it to digital.
Yeah,
They want that look.
Quick story. I was doing a solo album for Rico Kasich from the Cars, and
Which one was
in
it?
Boston, the very first one. And
Beat it to?
while we were tracking, and Roy Thomas Baker walked in, and they said, "Well, why don't you let Roy get his drum sound?" And Roy went over and he turned everything up, and as soon as the drummer hit, all of the meters pinned, and that was his drum sound.
Wow.
It's like, okay.
that's just drum sound, and he charged $7,000 an hour for that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? This has been great. I want to keep tabs on the clock, but let me tell you, one thing I wish I would have mentioned up front. We can talk more about this later, but the past 4 years, speaking about analog, one of the things that's really changed for me in this analog world is how I monitor stuff and how I listen. And a good example is these guys. I'm a firm believer of in-ear monitors, because it connects me to the sound source, and creates an image in my head that even speakers can't do for me. And they're not easy to work with. You got to learn. I bought a cheaper pair so I could learn how to fit them, because the fit and the seal are super important. If you put them on and you plug them in, I guarantee you're going to think they sound like garbage, because you have to learn how to do the seal and you have to learn how to get the fit and the right tip. But if you make that commitment, man, it's like the purest analog. Like, I have PMC speakers and I still have them. They're up against the wall. But actually right now, my speaker of choice is these little iLouds, the little micro ones. I have those playing, and I have a 15-inch M&K subwoofer hooked up to them, and they sound so amazing. Now, granted, we're missing there's a big scoop in there, but it's just really pleasant. And because a lot of critical listening, I use these, and speaking of that, Larry used to be Stevie Wonder's monitor engineer, and he actually had years ago, before IEMs were as hot as they are now, he had a company called Circuits Maximus, and that's what Stevie wore. And I understand now why Stevie and wears these in-ear monitors, because your imaging and your picture is so like you can just see it. I mean, we don't have to go down this alleyway, but this is a perfect example to me of the purest analog. It's like what you hear. And Larry, super quick, you were ahead of the curve on this. Tell me a little bit about when you showed Stevie the in-ear monitors versus what he was using before.
Well, actually, Mike, I came into that gig when he had already been using in-ear monitors and developed a system that just had a little, I think, a little better fidelity. Um, but that technique for him, in his case, people who are sight impaired, it allows them to maintain a stereo image or place things in stereo. In his case, that's the same every night, because when he's performing on stage, he would sometimes he has a keyboard that faces the audience, sometimes the keyboard faces to his left, and so sighted people can go, "Oh, I know the audience is to my right. I know the drummer's over here on behind me." But sight impaired people don't necessarily know where things are on the stage, and if you create that atmosphere in their head that's the very same every night, I think it in his case, it made a comfort level to know that there's a consistency of the sound that he recognizes night after night, regardless of what room you're in or how big or small the room is.
Yeah, the consistency. I think that you nailed it. That's the term, because like with my in-ears, I can get the same sound if I'm on an airplane, if I'm in my hotel room. I did a lot of traveling these last couple of years, and so much so that I can't listen to my Bluetooth speaker, my headphones, because I hear that digital Bluetooth thing, and so I went with these, and it's wired, and I actually went so much as I got a little media player because I wanted the direct connection between that. And I will tell you this, okay, it's analog and it's speakers, so there's a lot of snake oil out there. there's ridiculous, like you can spend so much money, and I went to a headphone Can Jam. It just so happened to be in Irvine, by where I'm at, and so I went to it and I tried all these different in-ear monitors. You bring your own tips and you try them, and I tried. Some of them were like $7,000 a pair. Some of them were like $4,500 a pair. And you're like, oh my gosh. And people are spending like thousands of dollars on just like the cable, like just the cable alone. They're spending all this money. So there's all this snake oil. But I will tell you, as far as talking about analog, the ultimate analog, like if you want to go down that route, you can't get much more analog than hearing in your ear. And me and Scott used to go back and forth between PMC and Barefoot and things like that. And now I'm like, they sound great. They all sound great. But man, when you have the imaging, when you hear some of your favorite music, any band, even if it's progressive Rob, I'm sorry, progressive sounds good on ears, but it's a whole different ballgame. So we'll go down that road. But yeah, I can see why Stevie, is such a fan.
Mm.
Yeah, and I just wanted to chime in. Actually, two things. Some of you are aware, because we've been working on it for a long time. We're actually working on the next generation of in-ear monitor technology for stage performance. And Marvin Caesar, who owned Aphex, who's a friend of the show and been a guest on the show, he got a patent for a 3D in-ear monitor system that we've been sort of working on in fits and starts, but we're making progress with it, which will give a performer a 3D representation of the audio around them instead of just a stereo one. So it's sort of the next logical step, which not just for blind performers, but for any performer, it'll just give you a more realistic stereoscopic field or 3D field in your headphones, which will be cool. The other thing I wanted to mention was just a little bit about analog quality, because recently, like I said, I've been developing a podcast network and producing all these shows, and I'm working with a lot of younger people who basically everybody's focused on the visuals, what kind of camera you have. Are we doing 4K, all this kind of stuff? But obviously you have to record audio for these shows, and their answer to everything is, well, just plug a mic into the camera, it'll be fine, or plug a mic into the switcher, it'll be fine. And so I actually set up to do some experiments because, yeah, if you don't listen to anything else, it is fine. But then I set up in one of our shows, one of the ones that uses the most technology, I set up a bunch of different analog preamps along with just plugging into the camera and stuff. And so we recorded the shows. I recorded multi-channel audio, so we had all these different recordings. And then I said, okay, this is the audio that we recorded, plugged into the camera, and it's a good mic, and it's plugged into a good camera, but it's still just using the audio electronics in the camera. I said, and this is what it sounds like. Then I showed them, oh, this is what happened when you go through a really great preamp to a really great A to D converter and record that. And of course, they were blown away. It's not even close how much better it sounds. But, we've always been fighting against good enough is good enough and convenient is good enough. And since the days of MP3s starting, that's always been an issue. But when you can show people how much better analog is, of course, now everybody I work with is like, we're going to do it that cool way, right? It's like, yes, we're going to do it the cool way. The cool way is from 1982, but yes, it's the cool way.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to convert people when they hear how much better it is, but it's more expensive. It's less convenient. You got a lot of stuff to set up. But it is so much better to do analog the better way as opposed to the convenient way. And, for some productions it matters, for some it doesn't. But on our network, everything's going to be well recorded.
Well, that's great. And you know what? On that, we're gonna wrap this up. And really quick, Larry, I want to give you the last word here on the whole analog thing. Is there anything that you can talk about or anything you're excited that API either has recently released, or you just want to plug? Hey, here you go, free plug for our 8 listeners.
Well, there isn't, to be honest with you, at the moment, other than there's no major changes in analog. So the only things we do are slight tweaks to the technology that allows our equipment to better perform with the outside world, which is a digital interface or digital playback systems. So minor tweaks to the way that they interface for the way people work today are really what's the changes in our gear. Other than the fact that we did a fairly nice monitor controller here a little bit ago that has been pretty well received.
That's fantastic. And you know what? I'm going to give a plug for you. If you're out there and you want to start your analog journey, there's no better place to start than API. Get a 500 series lunchbox. First thing you want to do, if you want to change your sound overnight, just get a really good mic preamp. That mic preamp will make any mic better. Like if it's an expensive mic, it's going to sound even more expensive. If it's a cheap mic, it's going to sound more expensive. So get that. And then go to either a 560 EQ if you get a pair of 560s, that's like, you can get any old loop that you have and just give it brand new life. Like you can make anything sound better and fatter and meaner. So, you can start down 560s and then go with the compressors, and the 525 is great. 527 with the thrust technology is amazing. That is super. In a nutshell, it's be able to keep your transients while controlling your volume, which is huge. So there you go, Larry. Sorry, I had to give
Thanks, Mike. Plug. Thanks for that. Your spiff is on the way.
All right, guys. Well, we got to wrap it up. And I don't want to take a lot of time, but super quick. Everybody, just give me a 30-second. Rob, you working on anything interesting that you can talk about, or you can just say we can talk about it next time?
My passion project is all the podcast stuff. I'll talk about more about that later. I also wanted to tell Nick, I actually play Chapman stick. So at some point, I do. I haven't in a while, but I do. And I actually have one that I drove to Emmett's house in Woodland Hills and bought from him. So we'll compare notes. But more to talk about on future shows.
There you go. Bobby, is there anything you're working on, you want to plug?
Well, one of the things I neglected to talk about before we talked about the last 4 years is on my podcast, we're now past episode 600. Right?
Wow.
Episode 612.
Wow.
So I think
well
that's
done.
Cool.
Amazing.
Well done. That's great. Yeah. And by the way, Bobby has a great podcast, so listen to it. It's how podcasts should be done. No, it's really good. Nick, is there anything you want to plug, or did you already do it at the front?
I already did it at the front. Anyone needs any sound design or DaVinci Resolve training? www.nicholaspeck.com. That's NICOLASPECK. Operators are in fact standing by.
Oh my gosh. Yes. You know what? Nick's a really good teacher.
Yeah.
I've learned a few things from him, and he's very patient. So seriously, I would take him up if you need that. Scott, how about you? Really quick, anything?
Doing Street Fighter, and there's a little passion project I'm doing with a lot of friends called The Night on Mars that's starting to get little burbles of things. That it's going to be a special venue, whether it's the Sphere or Cosm. There's a big thing that we're looking at with a lot of big musicians, and it's something that Rich Trizzoli's putting together, and it's going to be fun. But that's, he's starting to talk about it, so I can say that much.
Oh, that's good.
And you, Mike?
Well, I'm not going to really tell you what I've been up to or what I'm working on, because I'm going to take this time, just a few seconds, to tell you something that's really near and dear to me. And that's, if you're out there and you're a studio guy and you're our age or even a little younger, take care of yourself. Okay. You need to, if something doesn't feel right, go to the doctor. I'm telling you this because this past year, I had a quintuple bypass surgery, and that would have not been found had I not gone to the doctor, and thank God I didn't have a heart attack, and they got it beforehand. But you need to listen to your body. And, let's face it, none of us are, jogging as we're working. We all work in studios, we all work in keyboards. You have a pretty, still life. So just take care of yourself. That's all. It's
Amen.
everybody needs to be around for a while and listen to your body and take care of yourself. So anyway.
Amen, brother.
Good advice.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That's a good idea.
All right. Well, thank you, Larry. Thank you, guys. This has been a blast. This is 20 years, and I want to applaud everybody for still being here for 20 years. Some of us are 10, some of us are 5, some of us are 15. But all in all, I'm looking forward to, maintaining this into the next 20 years. So I appreciate everybody being here, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye. Yeah. See you, Joanne.
Thanks for listening to the Audio Nowcast, sponsored by API. We'll see you next time.